Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Marilyn Shannon, and this is the Breaking Free Show. And I'm so happy to be here with you today. Thank you so much for sharing your time with us. I know it's precious, and especially this time of year, everybody's got a million things to do, but I'm so glad that you are with us because we honor that and we take it seriously. And each week, we love to bring you some really interesting things, interesting nuggets to live the rest of your life with. And before we get on with our show, I want to say hi to Amnon.
Hello, Marilyn. How are you?
Good. Everybody, this is Amnon. He
You
is
had
our
a
producer.
you had a good weekend.
I did. You know, for all of you that might have been listening to us in the past, we just moved and unpacked and all that kind of good stuff. And oh my God, it's been traumatic. But for the first time in like 2 years, because it took us like 2 years to get our house ready, for the first time in like 2 years, I feel like I'm living. Like I actually can just like cook and not worry about the smells because people come in the house. My husband gets to relax. I am walking around constantly saying, "I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful." It's amazing what moving can do to a person. I mean, seriously. And so, anyway, I'm really happy, and My mother said I'm the calmest I've ever been in a long time. That's a real compliment. So anyway, listen, you are always welcome anytime during my show to call in anytime you want. And you can do that on our phone, which is 919-518-9773. You can join us in our chat and just put your name, nickname, whatever you like, and you can ask questions, you can comment, uh, whatever you want in there. And you can always come in on Skype too, and that is Computers 2K Voice. You will come in on voice, not video, voice. So wherever you are in the world, you are welcome to join us. And we want you to. We put on shows that we want you to get up and call in and talk to us. This is not like traditional TV. It is TV because we have a picture and we like to call it TV and it's online, it's all that good stuff. But at the same time, you can call in and comment, talk, whatever you like. Okay? So now we're going to get on with our show. And we have a lovely man, just a delightful man. He's written 2 books. His first one is called It's Not What I Know, It's How I Learned It. There you go, Richard Liposky. And then we have Grandpa and Andy, which was intriguing to me. Here we go. 2 really interesting books, a little diverse, but not so diverse, very connected. And Dr. Liposky is a surgeon, businessman, and author. And that combination in itself is intriguing to me. And therefore, here he is. Welcome, Dr. Richard Liposky. How you doing, Richard?
Hi, Marilyn. Nice to be here.
It's nice to have you. So, tell us a little bit about your, going from from Vietnam to this, to this, to this, to this, and why this title. It's not what I know, it's how I learned it. Because I couldn't feel any different than that. That's how I feel.
Well, it's just the fact that I've learned from every experience. Whether I was building model airplanes at age 8 to standing in Vietnam with all the issues that we had to deal with there, to starting running and staying in businesses, learning to become a surgeon, practicing surgery, dealing with the politics, dealing with all the issues. I see those today as just learning experiences. And anywhere along the line, I could have quit. But, I didn't quit. And whatever that blessing is, the most successful businessmen are the businessmen who fail the most, but never quit. And I think over time, that's what I learned. I learned it the hard way through the College of Hard Knocks, but that's okay because I didn't quit. So, in the book, I talk about all the different businesses that I ran and how much I invested and how much, whether it was time or money, and then what kind of return on investment I got. Often the return on investment was what I learned from being in that business. And I used that to start the next one and to apply and continue. So the first book, It's Not What I Know, It's How I Learned It, is a book to help people to not be afraid to fail. If they have an idea, if they have a vision, if they've always wanted to be in business, go out and try it. Go out and do it. Learn what it takes to start a business, learn what it takes to stay in business, and then build it and go for it. I'm excited about young people that start their own businesses. Mm-hmm. I worry about them only to the extent that they will get discouraged, and they should never get discouraged. That's right. Just part of life. You know?
Right. That's why we do shows like this, so people can hear, listen to, people like yourself who have a tool, a strategy, a technique, an idea, so that we can be free. We can, do our thing. And I think one of the things that I want to just reiterate, as Dr. Liposky was talking, was, sometimes the investment is one thing. The gain is not always money. The gain is the knowledge that you have to have in order to have a financial gain or just a life gain. So that's a very important little piece right there.
Yeah. Some people, when they go on a trip, they wait for all the lights to turn green. And, if you go through life waiting for everything to be perfect before you leave on your trip, you'll never leave on your trip. You have to recognize that there's going to be a yellow light, there's going to be a red light, there's going to be a detour. And some people, when they come to a detour in life, they turn around and go back. But a detour is not to stop and turn around. A detour just means we're going to change the direction a little bit. We're going to help you go and get to your destination, but you have to go a little different way than you originally planned. So, like I say, I'm excited about seeing people strike out and go out on their own and try things. But there are some fundamental basics that you have to do. You can't just leave on a trip. Like I gave the example of the traffic lights. But if you leave on a trip and you don't know where you're going, you're still going to get someplace, but you may not know where you're going to end up until you get there. So, you have to have a plan. You have to have a destination in mind.
Right. You're going to go on a trip and a vacation. You got to pack your bags, right? You're not always going to go with empty bags. So let's start a little bit back. Talk a little bit about one of your most extraordinary lessons.
Well, my goodness, most extraordinary lesson probably was when, as I learned in businesses, learned and started businesses and ran businesses, the lesson that I learned was that I didn't know. Because when you think you know, you probably don't. And when you think you know everything, you don't. And when you know everything, that's the time to sit down, shut up, and listen. My problem was I wasn't ready for the third part yet because I thought I knew everything, you see. And if you asked me, I would not hesitate to tell you that I knew everything. And that's not a good place to be. But you see, I had people that told me that I didn't know, and I wouldn't listen to them. So I had to, get knocked down a little bit, and say, hey, finally, Dr. Liposky, you don't know everything. And when I learned that, I was willing to sit down, shut up, and listen. And I learned to start to surround myself with successful people. And the more successful they were, the smarter they were, the more I was able to listen. And that became the turning point from all the businesses that I've run. That was the turning point that put me, where I am today. And that's the message I got to get to young people. Surround yourself with successful people, and then listen to them.
So let me ask you something, Richard. How successful are you now?
Well, I think I have a long way to go yet. I have achieved. I think I've achieved a lot of things, but I still have a lot to offer. Whether it's on the innovative side in surgery, whether it's in being able to help people to achieve their dreams and goals. My success are the puffed up moments that I have. Puffed up moments means I can stick my chest out and say, I helped that person. And that's what I want to be able to do. When I have that, when I can have a puffed up moment, that's success.
So you're a surgeon.
Right.
You taught in dental schools, right?
I taught in the residency programs. I taught in the programs for where we were teaching the doctors to rebuild wounded faces or traumatically injured faces. So I tell people that, I taught guys to be able to take the face apart and put it back together again without having any parts left over, which is very important.
And you did that. You were one of the innovators in that. Am I right?
Yeah, I did quite a bit of research. It was sort of at the beginning of those surgical procedures. So I was able to participate in a lot of the clinical research. I have patents on medical devices. I have some surgical procedures that I actually did develop. But I can tell you that those procedures that I developed, and I was very proud of them, were like the foundation for subsequent surgery. Because as we ended up with better diagnostic tools, better surgical instrumentation, better anesthesia, then the procedures that I developed were able to be improved upon. And that's a puffed up moment to be able to say, I did it back then when we didn't know what we were doing. Nobody knew. Some of the stuff had never been done before. So, and by the way, it's not just me involved in this. I had some very gifted surgeons who encouraged me to try these things and to figure out ways that we could help people where we didn't have any way to help them. I just didn't do it on my own. I had some doctors that, put their hand on my shoulder and said, go ahead and do it. Let's see if we can help this person. And then once we did it and it worked, then we were able to repeat it and report it to other surgeons and then write it up and then eventually help other doctors to do the same procedures.
So one of the important things to note is that in 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now, we're going to look back and go, based on where we are at that point, 5, 10, 15, 20 years, we know nothing now. Or we didn't know as much now as we're going to know then, right? So we're always learning and growing, and the willingness not to say you know it all or we're there is really important to take where you are and let it be, your spring, the place that you come from, the way that you then progress into the next part. And, that's exactly what Richard is saying. What he did however many years ago was, a really important, pop up for him. But, it popped him to the next place, and then that pops him to the next place. And he's constantly, learning, which, to be able to have somebody like you that we can talk to, it's not very often that I know of that you can talk to a doctor, I don't care, other than a PhD maybe, who's going to be talking about business and how to take, a medical facility and look at it in terms of being a business, which is, really fascinating that you knew to make that connection. So how did you know to make that connection?
Well, you have to look at business. You have to look at the practice as a business. All businesses either provide a service or a product. But the thing is that in the practice itself, you're providing a service to the patients to be able to help the patients. But you have to pay your staff. You have to pay your rent. You have to, and ultimately there has to be a little bit left over that you can take home and support your family. That's why you went into the profession, to help people and to support your family, to create a lifestyle. And if those things don't work, then the practice fails. So from that standpoint, you have to run your practice as a business, but it has to be in balance. You can't run it to the point as a business that you forego good patient care. They have to come together. And the more you run it as a business, the better the patient care will be, because now you're not worried about do I have to do so many operations in order to pay my bills? You're now saying, I want to do these operations to help these people, And if I do these operations, I'll be able to pay my bills.
Right, right. So it doesn't matter, and so Rich is talking about the dental practice, but you can apply this to any service business, any product. You do not have to forego your customer service to have a business. Whether
That's
you're
absolutely right.
Whether you're a massage therapist, acupuncturist, coach, or you're selling, clothing, you do not have to, give up your good customer service or anything for that matter to run a business. If you don't run a business, you won't have good customer service. If you don't have good customer service, you won't have a business. Yeah.
And there's so much to that, because we see that in some businesses where they are so focused on customer service, but they're delivering an inferior product.
Exactly.
But people still buy the product because they really enjoy going there. It's like going to a restaurant. You can't stand the food, but the people are great. On the other side, you can have someone that has perfect food, but their service is terrible or their ambiance is terrible. And so people don't go there, even though they know that they'll say the food is good. I just hate to go there. You see? So, there has to be that balance. And the smart businessman, the successful businessman recognizes that these are integral parts of running a business. And they have to work together. It's just like a car. You can have the most sophisticated car, but if you get a flat tire, it's still a flat tire. You can't go anywhere.
Right.
You say, well, my engine runs, but I can't go anywhere. So it all works together.
Right. And so, you grew your dental practice, and how big did it get? I mean, do you have one office, two offices? How big did it get?
My original practices were hospital-based practices, because I did all facial and reconstructive surgery.
Okay.
So in the office itself, mostly what I did was the exams and consultations and follow-ups and stuff like that. The surgery was in the hospital, and these were operations from probably 2 hours would be a short hour one, and 15 to 17 hours would be a long operation. And so obviously those were hospital procedures, and I did that. I was in the hospital probably 3 to 4 days a week to handle those patients. Gotcha.
Well, I love the title of this, because everything about my life is a learning lesson. And I believe that, to play hard, you have to work hard. And to work hard, you have to play hard. You can't work if you don't play, and you can't play if you don't work. Can't afford to. Right. So everything about our life and our business meshes. So everything about your life is relevant for your business, whatever it is, because you're one person, you're doing them both, hopefully, right? So, Richard, go ahead.
No, I just missed you on that. You broke up just a little bit.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry.
No problem. What I said was our lives are our business, and our business is all part of our life.
Yes.
And a lot of people work from home. A lot of people don't go to an office. A lot of entrepreneurs are, solo entrepreneurs, and we're working by ourselves. So our life and our business is so connected that this information is relevant, because, you're networking, you're out in the world, you're socializing, you're going to the grocery store. The opportunity to meet somebody is right there, right? So there's so many opportunities to blend the two. And I think that's key in some of what Richard's talking about.
Well, let's talk just about that blending, because that speaks balance in business and or your job and your family life. There has to be balance. This is not anything unique or new, but people have to step back sometimes, take a deep breath, and understand that there has to be balance. And for the businessman, sometimes he can get so focused in starting up his new business and that he forgets that he has a family, or he forgets that he still has to pay his bills, and you get so focused in that. And I use the example of an airplane taking off, that there's so much energy expended to get the airplane off the ground, to defy gravity. But then you still have to put energy into that flight to get it to the altitude that it wants. That's like the business growing. You got it off the ground. Now it's starting to really grow. It's going higher and higher and higher. But the key thing is that if you look at an airplane and it reaches its altitude and then they shut the engines off, what's going to happen to that airplane? It's going to come down. Even if they don't apply very much energy, it'll still not continue to maintain its altitude. So in business, it's the same way, that you get it off the ground and it is, you expend more energy. And now you're reaching that altitude where you think, boy, we finally made it. But the moment you kick back and say, I made it, that's the plateau. And if you quit putting energy into your business, if you kick back and say, okay, this business is going to run on its own, that's like asking an airplane to fly on its own, and it won't. The energy has to continue to be put into the flight. It has to be continued to put into your business. So, one of the authors that I respected, talked about businesses saying that a lot of businesses get off the ground, they reach that plateau, and then they start to go down. And he says that's the difference between a business an entrepreneur who wants to start a business for the sake of starting a business, instead of starting a business for the sake of creating a long-term long-term successful business. Did you get on the plane just to get off the ground, or did you get on the plane to get off the ground and get back down where you wanted to go?
Good. That's a great point. So what do you love about business?
Pardon me?
What do you love about business?
Oh, I think business, I love business because there's an energy level in business. And that in itself is exhilarating. It's exhilarating to the person building the business, to the people around them, to the family, to everybody involved. So I love business from the excitement that it creates. It by definition, it implies innovation. By definition, it implies new and exciting things. That's what's exciting about business. Even even if you are working or say you're joining a franchise, your particular franchise, your particular unit in that franchise is still a new business. Mm-hmm. And even though you're following the model of the franchise, you see, you're responsible for what you're doing there. There's excitement in that. If there's no franchise and you're opening the new corner store, there's excitement in that. And that's what I find exciting about business. And the sad part about it is some people get discouraged over that. They get excited and then it disappears. It's like going to a baseball game and the score is 10-1, and you say, well, okay, it's 10-1, we won, I'm going home, and there's 3 more innings, and then you get home and you find out that the other team won 11-10. You see, so you became complacent about your excitement of the game, and you missed it. You missed out on it.
So everybody has an opportunity to
Absolutely.
Remain excited. And, when you were talking, one of the scenarios I think about often is sometimes the opportunity somebody has to go into a parent's business. And they think in a successful business, and you think because you go in that it's successful, it's going to be fine. But the truth of the matter is, you go in and you have to keep it successful.
That's right. You have to not only know how the business started, but you have to know how it got to where you are and you're taking it over. And we talk about the first generation starts the business, the second generation loses the business, and the third generation tries to put it back together again. So, I'm familiar with some businesses where the owners of the business brought their children into the business and then didn't bring them in as executives. They brought them in as people at the bottom to learn how the business worked from bottom up. And once these young people learned how the business, what the foundation of the business was, then they were able to take over the business because they understood where it came from. Mm-hmm. But if you just, a young person goes to business school and comes out and dad is running a business, says, Dad, I'll take it over. The only thing that young person knows is what the professors taught him about the business, not what dad taught him about the business.
Right. Right. So being excited is a great check-in.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
are you still excited?
Am I? Absolutely.
Well, in general, anybody, if you're in your business, are you excited? Are
Yeah.
you looking forward to doing it? Do you get a thrill from it? And if you're not, you've got to find a way to get that re-excited thing going again.
Well, simple question to a person like that is, how do you see yourself? How do you see this business or yourself 5 years from now? If everything went perfect in your life, how do you see yourself 5 years from now? You know, I've had people when I ask that question a lot to people because it tells me a lot about where they are and where they're going, where they're going to be. And there are some people say, well, you know, I sort of just take it one day at a time. I'm just one of those one day at a time guys. And I said, well, then where are you going to be tomorrow? He said, well, I'll just have to wait and see where I'm at tomorrow. You know, so you talk about 5 years, that's a long time, you see. But on the other hand, you'll talk to people and say, well, 5 years from now, and Dr. Liposky, I'm saying if everything goes perfect, then this is where I want to be. My children will be ready for school. You know, I hope to have a new home now. I hope to be further along in my job. I hope to be in an executive position in my job or something. And they lay that out. Here's the important thing. With that vision, they have the best chance of getting there. Because we qualified it, we if everything went perfect. But the thing about it is if everything goes perfect, that's where they're going to be. You see, if it doesn't go perfect, it'll be somewhere different. But you have the best chance. The person who says, you know, I take it one day at a time, I take it 5 years at a time. I'm a 5-year guy. I take it 5 years at a time. Where are you going to be in 5 years? I don't know. We'll see in 5 years. My goodness, you only get about 12 chances at 5 years at a time, and you're checking out. So it's not a good idea, you know.
Not a good idea to use up one of them, huh? That way.
Yeah, don't use them up. Yeah.
Don't use them up. So I wanted to ask you, so how did you go from it's not what I know, it's how I learned it, to Grandpa and Andy? Because I think this is just so cool. How'd you do that?
Well, that you know, the message I had, and it's not what I know, it's how I learned it, was you know, a lot of my personal experiences. But how do you get that information to the next generation? And you know, children ask the best questions, and they're the toughest questions. You know, if a 6-year-old asks you a question, you answer his question for him. If a 16-year-old asks the same question, that's the same question, and he needs the same information, but you have to give it to him in a way that he understands it now at 16 years old, based on everything he's learned from 6 years old up to 16. So you and I, have the responsibility of getting that information to those children in a way that it becomes part of their foundation, that it becomes part of how they can grow and build their lives. So that's a lot of responsibility for the parents, for the siblings, for the grandparents, for the teachers, and for everybody else around. I like to talk about the fact that you're always on stage. We are always on stage. Children learn from us even when we don't say anything to them. So we have a responsibility to be able to give our children the best education, morally, ethically, whatever they need. Have that responsibility. But we have to understand that they're watching us. Mm-hmm. They're watching us. So if mom and dad don't respect each other, that young person learns that disrespect. And that may transfer all the way to that young person opportunity when he's dealing with a spouse, you see. Mm-hmm. But if the young person says, I always remember my mom and dad, man, they were best buddies. They were always, and they always looked out for me. That's the image that he's going to use as the basis for his family. And you say, well, gee whiz, what happens if it's a single parent? Well, then that's even more of a responsibility for that single parent to take charge, you know, to be there for that child. You know, the child is almost like a seed, and if you plant the seed in a bad environment, the plant is not going to grow well. If you don't give it the fertilizer and nourishment it needs, the plant is not going to grow as tall or as healthy. And in life, and this is, again, I'm not a great philosopher. I'm just telling you how I feel, and that's the basis of Grandpa and Andy, that we do have that responsibility to teach these kids. We have to give them the best foundation. And sometimes we have to modify that foundation. If the foundation breaks down, we have to rebuild it at that point. It may be at 2 years old, 10 years old, 21 years old. Young people say, I didn't realize how smart my parents were until I was 25 years old, but that's just life.
Right.
But we have to take advantage. We have to take that responsibility.
So I have some questions, and I really want to get into some more of this about Grandpa and Andy. I think it's brilliant. So, but I do want to remind everyone to please feel free to call in 919-518-9773 or computers 2K Voice. You can come in on Skype or come in on our chat, ask us a question, comment, whatever you are comfortable doing. We would love to have you. This notion of Grandpa and Andy, it's really interesting because when you talk about, as we were talking about earlier, about business and young people having the confidence, or any of us, we're all young, right? Having the confidence not to quit or even just to start, for Pete's sakes. When you think of the opportunity that we all have to impart something on a child, Richard's talking about Grandpa and Andy. It could be Grandma and Sarah. It could be Auntie and whoever. It could be the neighbor down the street. Yeah. We have an opportunity, I know, with my grandsons, and I have 3 of them. When they ask me a question, I can't say I always did that for my children. I don't know if I always took the time and realized how important it was because I'm much more evolved now. But when my grandchildren ask me a question, I make it my business to really answer them. And if I see somebody somewhere along the way, give them some kind of insensitive answer, feeling, thought, I go over and especially for my 6-year-old, I whisper something in his ear. Because in order for us to grow up, being able to feel, empowered and to create things, whatever that might be, this is those children asking those questions, it is a big deal that we give them those kinds of good answers and that we help them feel that, they're funny, they're smart, and they're all those things. So I love this, and I'm glad you did it.
I had a gentleman, an executive from one of the major corporations, talk to me, and he says, Dick, he says, you're so right about this Grandpa and Andy stuff. He says, my little grandson, 4 years old, I was taking him in the car, and he asked me a question, and I answered it for him. And as soon as I answered the question, he asked me another question, and I answered it for him. And as soon as I answered that, he asked me another question, and I answered it for him. And he asked me another, and I said, Mark, you have a lot of questions for a 4-year-old. And little Mark looked up at me and said, but Grandpa, I need a lot of answers.
Yeah.
And isn't that so true?
Yeah.
And he liked the Grandpa and Andy concept, but he says, we really have to step back and help these children because they're learning so fast. They're sitting on their little electronic devices and communicating, with other people, as far as we know. But they're growing, they're learning exponentially. When I was learning 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 2 + 2 is 4. These kids now are already into exponential equations at 4 years old. So
my grandsons, they'll be. I have a 6-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 2-year-old, and they will be in their cars, and they're 2 different families, and they will very often say, "Grandma, I have a question for you," because the Bluetooth is on, and I'll say, "What's your question?" It's not a question; it's a statement of some sort. But they see it as a question, and I guess it's because kids are curious, that even when they're making a statement, they see it as, a question, and it's adorable. And and we need to take the time
Well,
to to
there's
teach
two,
them.
there's an area in Grandpa and Andy that I think is important. It's called, there's the cycle of influence and the circle of influence. And the cycle of influence is very applicable to everything we do, not only for children, but also into our lives, because it says that, you know, when you have a relationship, you gain, you can make a decision. Do I want to pursue this relationship or not? And if you say, I want to pursue it, then you gain information. You learn about that particular person or that particular relationship. And from there, then you establish trust. And from trust, then you give that person credibility. And from credibility, that person has influence on you, or that event. That's called the cycle of influence. But that's applicable to young people who get under the influence of someone in their school and as a negative influence, but a relationship, they gained information, they thought it was the right thing to do or whatever. They trusted that person, they gave that person credibility. And then we find that person off the track. You know, that person maybe is on using drugs or doing bad things. And you say, how could that be? Because his mom and dad are good people, and they work with him and they do all these things. But you see, the cycle of influence is a very important thing, because it starts with the relationship, and it can be just, hi, how you doing? You see, and you may say, doing fine, and that's the end of it. But you might say, I'm doing great. How are you? Now you got a little bit more information. And where are you from? Well, I'm from here. And more information, more information. And it just builds from the relationship to information to trusting that person a little bit, assigning credibility. Now I believe whatever he tells me. And then from there, it goes on to influence. And that's how people can get caught up. And that's not only for bad things like drugs or whatever, but it could be just in business. You know, that you see somebody that you meet, and he works at such and such company, and you get more information, and then you go from there to really trusting this guy, and boy, you believe everything he's telling you, sign credibility, and the next thing you know, you're in business with him and you've lost $200,000. You see? So the cycle of influence is important. And it's important because anywhere along in the cycle, you can step out. I don't trust this guy. He's not credible. I don't like the information. I don't even like the relationship at the beginning, you see. But the cycle of influence is important. It affects our young people today, but it affects all of us in our business and our relationships. So.
It's interesting. You can tell. It's a very interesting point. You can tell when with a cycle of influence with children, you can tell when they are checked in, and you can tell when they check out. Now, there's plenty of adults where that cycle of influence has, has gotten caca, and they're not checking out. But children tend to check out.
Yeah. Children, it's interesting. In my experiences in the military in Vietnam, when I went into the hamlets, sometimes if I could win the children over in the village, then we could accomplish our mission of being able to help the children, but also everybody. Now, the interesting thing was that the villagers many times sent the children in first to see how they did. And if the children did okay,
right,
then they would let us help them. Mm-hmm. But you know, that once I recognized that that's what they were trying to do, we had to make sure that, you know, that young person came away with a smile, you know, as opposed to maybe a tear or something like that.
You know, well, it reminds me of the lemonade stands. You know, I read a book a while ago. I can't even remember what it was called. I think it was called The Lemonade Stand, actually, and it was about kids and how important it is that any time you see a kid selling something, go buy it on the street. You know, whatever it is, lemonade. It doesn't matter how bad it is. Kool-Aid, buy the Kool-Aid. Anytime you see it.
buy it, but don't necessarily drink it.
No, 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 and give them a tip. So let me ask you something, because this is, I mean, it's you go, it's kind almost like if you're just looking at you, you go from one end to another end to a different end to the middle to the bottom to the top. You kind of like are all over in certain regards, but everything is connected. Now, my question to you is, you must be one heck of a daddy.
Well, I've been blessed with some great kids. I have four great daughters, and they're all in the business world, and you know, married great guys, and I got six grandchildren, and you know, it's kind of grandchildren. You know, we talk about kids growing fast. Grandchildren are growing up already. You know, I love them to come and visit with me, but then it takes me about 3 hours to get my TV to work again, and I have to call them, you know, and they're in their car, and they say, "Well, Grandpa, just do this, push this button, and I'll be darned, it works." So, but no, it's been good. It's been good, and a great lady. Irene you know, we've been married 51 years, and she finally decided I'm a keeper. So I that's very, very encouraging. So,
Well, good for you. So what's next for you?
well, next for me is to be able to help people, you know, to just help people, encourage them to pursue their dreams. You know, that might sound a little hokey, but you know, everything starts with a dream. Whether it's a business, whether it's a marriage, whether it all starts with a vision. So, you know, I want people to be excited. You know, when they have a vision, you know, make the decision to pursue it. Don't be afraid of it. You know,
Do you
fear.
feel like you could support somebody in growing an idea, growing an existing business, regardless of the business, as long as they are excited?
Yeah, I guess yes. I would say yes. I do. I do coach, uh, you know, businessmen and people in their practices and that, helping them to you can say either be more profitable or to be more successful, or help them go in the direction they want to go. You know, I had a mentor of mine who said, he says, "Dick," he says, I'm gonna wave the checker flag for you." He says, "I'm gonna be at the finish line. I'm gonna wave the checker flag." And I said, what a concept, because you know, if we are out there waving the checker flags for people, we're encouraging them to cross that finish line. But you know, some people are out there waving red flags and yellow flags. You know,
Mhm.
so we want to wave the checker flag, and that's what I want to be able to do. Is to continue as long as I can keep talking. You know, as long as I can keep sharing my ideas and writing and you know, working like that. I think that's sort of maybe a gift that I have, maybe a blessing that I've had. But if I can help people to achieve their dreams, that's the puffed up moment. That's
Mhm.
when I can stick my chest out and say I helped that person. It makes me feel good. Yeah.
All right. Well, you live in I think you live in somewhat of a state of hope.
Well,
Like anything is possible.
you know, it really it is, and I don't think that's hokey. I think you go through life and and look at life as things can happen, cannot happen, and woe is me, and or you can get over it and move on. You know, and when you know, as bad as a person may feel their circumstances are, there's probably someone whose circumstances are worse. You
Mhm.
know, why complain about your feet when you see a guy stand there without any feet? You know, my goodness. You know, and so I think whatever your circumstances are, that's your circumstances. That's what you have to build from,
Mhm.
and only you can make the changes in it. If you wait for somebody else to change it, keep in mind they're living under their circumstances.
Mhm.
So you have to get up, kick butt, do whatever it takes, and if it takes enlisting more people or smarter people, or you know, if you need a crutch, then you need a crutch. But whatever it takes, I believe a person can achieve what they're looking for.
Right.
You know, so
Yeah, I
I mean,
couldn't agree with you more.
even a bank robber has a dream, right? He's looking for 3 meals and a cot, right? And sometimes he's successful, but sometimes he's not, so.
So, do you see any trends in the business communities these days? Any certain trend that you're seeing?
Well, I think uh, in the professions, I see some trends. I see uh, uh, a business model in the professions, which is more business and less focused on patient care. But I think that's a trend right now. It's sort of like the pendulum is swinging to one side, and I think it's going to come back, and everybody's, we're going to get balance between business and the profession and providing the care that the patients need. But those pendulums go back and forth. Right now young people are not opting for the professions as much as they did, say, 15 to 20 years ago. It's only because of what they're seeing that they may not have control over their lifestyle like they'd like to have, and they're going to invest 8 to 12, 18, 8 to 15 years after high school, and then to have someone else tell them, how to practice. And so they're opting not to do that because they can go 4 to 8 years in college and make a good lifestyle in the different businesses. But I think that's going to change. And so I definitely encourage young people to go into the professions. But I think the pendulum will swing. And I think 10 years from now, it'll be good again. It'll be good. Mm-hmm. But if we keep going the way we are and young people are being discouraged, we're going to have fewer physicians and dentists available. Right now, we're retiring more dentists and physicians than we are producing, and that's not good. People are being born, so the population is still increasing, and we should be increasing the number of young people going into the professions. Mm-hmm. And I encourage them to do that. Don't get caught up in all the hype. If you have a dream to become a physician, go for it. If you have a dream to become a dentist, go for it. It is a good lifestyle, and you'll be able to help people and also be able to take care of your family too. So,
yeah, I think it's a really important message, and I would say that regardless of what profession you are interested in, don't listen to anybody tell you that you can't. I don't care if you want to sing, and somebody says you're not going to make it. Why not? Somebody makes it all the time. Why not it be you?
Yeah, that's right. People that are it's the old phrase about people that say you can't do it are being interrupted by the people that are doing it. So just go do it. You're so right.
Yeah.
When I talk to young people and I'll ask them that question, I'll say, if say their first year in college, what are you going to do with it when you get out? Some young people don't know. So they're in college because that's what their goal was, to go to college. But the goal should not be to go to college. The goal should be to get out of college. And whatever you get out of college with, what you've learned, should be what you're going to do. But when you see young people investing $100,000 or $200,000 or $300,000 in their college education with no plan to use what they got, that's sad. Mm-hmm. So I like to I'll talk to them. I'll say, pick something, pick something that might appeal to you. You can always change, but at least you have some place that you'll end up.
Richard, did you ever think that when you were going to school and you were becoming a surgeon and a dentist, that one day you would be talking about mentoring business people? Did you ever think that?
No, I really don't think so. Yeah. Back then, I don't. When I was in practice and doing major surgery, I taught the residents in surgery. So that was more one-on-one and more technical and surgical, and didn't talk too much about the business.
Right.
But I did work with the one of the dental fraternities, was an honor fraternity at the dental school, and it's interesting because I talked a lot about business at that point because I was running other businesses while I was working with those students. So I was not talking about technical stuff. I was talking about the practice and running their practices back then. And it's interesting when you look back how many of those young men and women became surgeons. It's a disproportionate number that you see, but that speaks to what I was saying about you're always on stage. I never told them that they should become surgeons. Mm-hmm. See, but what they were doing was watching the lifestyle that I had as a surgeon, but I didn't know that. So you know, it wasn't until like 20 years later and reconnecting with some of the students back then, and oh yeah, he went on to become a surgeon. Oh yeah, he went on to become a surgeon. He went on to become a specialist. You know, and I thought, you know, well then I did help them a little bit. I did help.
So, and I have to interrupt you because you're making some points, and I want to kind of bring it around.
Sure.
So you talked about the flag, right? The checkered flag, to encourage young people to keep going and to try something, right? Because you're going to keep changing. You know, you weren't exactly, you know, when you went into medical school, into dentistry, you weren't exactly thinking where you are right now. I have been through so many different renditions of myself.
Yeah.
You know, it brings us back to the title. It's not what I know, it's how I learned it. And for kids, you know, that are out there to do things, you know, build up your experience container so that you can go from there. But the other important fact is, whoever you are that's listening to us now, whether you are in your 20s, 30s, 50s, 60s, whatever it is, we have an opportunity to hold that checkered flag. And if we walk around as a society in our 40s, 50s, 60s, whatever's, grandmas, grandpas, talking to Andy, and we walk around feeling like our world is coming to an end, what do you think our children, our grandchildren, our nieces and nephews are going to feel about going forward? I mean, what do you think? I mean, there are people like Richard out here, and he's holding that flag, and he's encouraging kids to talk, and he's encouraging, and he wants to work with young people and helping them, you know, get into the business community, stay there, whatever it is. But we all have to play that part.
Yeah. That's we all have to. That's right. And what does it hurt to encourage people?
Right.
But the sad part of it is, who do you hurt when you don't encourage them? You see, it doesn't hurt to encourage them, but it does hurt when you don't encourage them. And you know, it's a big responsibility. What a way to go through life, to know that there's hope out there.
Right.
You see? What a way.
Right. I mean, because really, when you look at the world in a you know rosy glasses kind of thing, you see more rosy. When you look without rosy, you don't see much rosy.
Yeah. Well, Marilyn, you started a business. You started this program, was 7 years ago?
6.
So you had a vision, you know, and you know, it's great. You know, it's a great success story in itself. That's the type. But you started somewhere, and there was probably people in your environment saying, "Oh, what do you want to do that for?" And then there are other people that said, "Go for it." Right.
Well, and that's, you know, getting back to your point about your cycle of influence, your circle of influence, the influences in your life. When somebody tells you something, suggests something that you truly trust, sometimes you don't go and try to dot every I and cross every T. You just say yes. And that's what I do. I just say, for the most part, yes. Sometimes, what does it mean for me to get into trouble? I start the show and I didn't like it. Oh my God. So I don't do it anymore, right? Or I start this show and I love it and it goes into other things, or, you know, coaching the same way. I mean, I started coaching and I wasn't sure what I was doing. And the first couple of clients, I didn't charge. And then I realized, but if I'm not charging, they don't own it.
That's
I got to
right.
charge. And then
There-
helps me keep going. So Richard, same thing, right?
I agree. I agree. I think they have to have, you can't teach somebody something until they make the decision that what you are teaching them is something they want to learn. Now, it's not too complicated, but the old story, you can't teach a pig to sing, it frustrates you and aggravates the
That's
pig,
right.
you just can't do that.
I'm not, you have my book up? So just want to say that one of the things that I'm scared to death to do is write. I love to talk and I love to use my own words, but I'm not, writing was scary for me, but I have things to say. And so I'm going to say them. And here's my book. It's on Amazon. It's the first of a series. This one is called In Just One Afternoon, Listening to the Hearts of Men. And I interviewed lots of men about their stories and how they are changing their world. And so writing, as I said, was not my thing, but I'm doing it anyway. So I have more coming. Richard, tell us about your books and where they can find everything about you.
Well, my books, of course, are on Amazon, but if you go to drliposky.com or grandpaandandy.com, either one of those, they'll write sites, books, chapter, but you can also, we're running a holiday special for autographed copies of both books. No shipping, just pay for the book, sign and send it out to you without any shipping charges. And if you can go to drliposky.com or grandpaandandy.com. Either one of those sites will bring you into the areas to enjoy the books. And I'd be interested in your comments on the books too. To your listeners, they read the book. Let me know what you think. It helps me. And I'm working on my next book too. By the way, I have all the pages numbered, so now I just have to figure something to put on them. So.
No, come on. You have a concept, don't you?
I'll figure something out.
I'm sure you will. You got lots of things to say, don't you? And that's important. And for those of you out there, you all have lots of things to say. And everything that, your life is important for us all. That's why we do this show. That's why we do it as a call-in. That, we want to listen to each other. Yeah. My tag for myself is listen with me, because I'm listening and I want to listen. I want us to listen together for whatever messages are out there, whatever we can learn. So, Richard, give us a final, some final words of wisdom.
Well, things I've told my kids was, know the difference between right and wrong. Always choose right. Be accountable for your actions. And the third thing is never quit learning. Strive to be a student and then to be a teacher. And if you know those things, you'll be very successful in life.
That's great. And I just want to kind of add a little caveat to about continuously learning. Sometimes people feel that they don't want other people to know what they don't know, and therefore they hold themselves back. But when you talk to successful people all the time, they have mentors and mentors and mentors, and they're always learning.
That's right.
Right?
That's right. Surround yourself with successful people and then listen to them.
Right.
Yeah.
And you learn, and then you begin to be able to make, discern what's good for yourself or whatever. But you got to learn, and things are always changing, just like in Richard's grandchildren's car, right?
That's right. Right.
Yeah, those cars are going to always be changing. So he's always going to have to learn from his grandchildren.
That's right.
Right? And I'm going to be learning from my grandchildren, because I'm going to tell you what, sometimes I listen to them and I'm like, hey, you actually were in the room and you could hear all these conversations at one time, and then you can tell me that? And I'm like, oh my God, you are really, really listening, aren't you?
Really good.
Well, you've been a terrific guest. I thank you so, so much for being here today and sharing so much of who you are and what your message is. And, it's terrific. So thank you for being here.
Well, and thank you. I appreciate this. This is very, very humbling and very nice that you did this. I
Well,
appreciate it.
my pleasure. Just like you, I want to share as much into the world as I possibly can, and you're one of them. So thank you. And
Thanks, Marilyn.
my
Appreciate it.
pleasure. Have a wonderful holiday, and everybody out there, thank you for being here with us today and sharing your time, and we'll see you next week. Have a good one. Bye.
You are tuned to the Nissan Communications Network. If you tuned in too late, you can always watch each program in its entirety or download an MP3 audio file of it in the archives section at nissancommunications.com. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Twitter, and like us on Facebook. Sponsored by Telestream's Wirecast software, StreamingGear.com, Carolina Apparel, and DeltaForce.net.